You know, a lot of the incentive compensation issue depends a lot, and I guess I don't want to jump the gun, but it depends a lot on the stage of the company and how predictable it is, because if it's highly unpredictable, having incentive compensation components can become more difficult. I think I'll let...
You know, you don't hear a lot about, at least at the early stage, a lot of incentive-based or variable compensation. I mean, I think as far as the salary numbers go, it's like a band around 200K, but and obviously when you get to be a bigger company and your revenue or you're going near IPO, you're going to have some cash base. So can you guys just specifically address, like for seed stage and A stage companies, what are people really doing for variable comp? Is it more cash? Is it more equity? Like what?
Well, you know, in our case, I mean, today we're a 60-person organization, and you know, we have all of our managers, all of our exec team, and in some cases senior individual contributors on a program that has a variable component associated with it. If you dial back to 4 years ago, when we were 20 people, you know, I was the first person to have a variable comp plan, and then in the second year extended that to the rest of the exec team, and then the third year to the managers, and on the fourth year to the senior individual people. So it's a progressive process, I think. And if anything, there's both the size of company, and it just in some respects there's just overhead involved, and there's complexity, and just sitting down and thinking it through and having someone manage it for you. You need to be at a certain scale just to keep track of all that, I think, and have it be, as Ken said, meaningful. And so, but I don't think it's unreasonable even for a 15 or 20 person company to have their CEO and their exec team on variable pay. I mean, you can do that.
And I think the other issue, I mean, I was in venture capital for 5 years. So I worked with a lot of startups, and I've started a few companies. And my opinion is just my opinion has always been, I always like to have variable comp because if you're a startup and your results are unpredictable, you can then have it determined subjectively rather than objectively. But having variable comp gives you a lot of flexibility, and quite honestly, it helps you manage cash flow. And it helps people all be incented in the right direction, even if it's going to be a subjective determination at the end of the period.
And what we see in our practice as well is it's pretty unusual for real early stage companies to have variable-based, true performance-based compensation. And part of the reason for that is a lot of early stage companies are still in the process of molding their business, and things shift quickly, and you might establish goals at the beginning of a year where halfway through the year, you're in an entirely different place. So we see that quite a bit. Ammar, what are you seeing from a board's perspective, and what do you think is appropriate in terms of what stage of company should put in place a bonus program?
Yeah, I think this may be somewhat personal philosophy as well. I think it's you want to pay for performance that can be controlled by the CEO. At an early stage company, when you're sort of in that creative phase, may not even have a business and you're figuring it out, it's kind of hard for me to figure out what I should incent you to do in the short term to make that happen. Once you have a business or have a direction and can put in place processes or programs or initiatives that can deliver results in the short term, then that's what your compensation should be based on. Some part of your compensation should be based on that. But I think there's a transition point where you go from creative to operational, and that's the right time to initiate that. Whether that's I think that can change. Some companies are selling stuff from day one. If they're a particular business and their metrics are easy to understand, other companies have a development period, and that's when you want them to be very focused on just getting their job done and realizing and thinking about the value of the equity, so they're maximizing the value of that equity, right?
And the market data bears you out on that. I mean, for Series A and early startups, it's very rare to see cash bonus. As you get further along, revenue companies, it's much more common. When you get to positive cash flow, everyone has it.
I think it's a little embarrassing to ask for a bonus when you're not actually making any money or not even generating any cash, right? It's sort of like, okay, I need a bonus, but I haven't made any, I've got zero revenues. That sort of seems a little hard.
Maybe one of the things that we see in that situation is we see companies with good intentions putting in place bonus programs, and then when you get partway through the year and realize you're in a completely different place, waiving entirely the goals and coming up with essentially a discretionary program in any event, which, calls into question how valuable that incentive program is to begin with.
What's interesting is, and this is something that started with another one of our investors, but the program itself, we call it's a variable incentive program. We don't use the word bonus because bonus implies there's a level of entitlement associated with that word. That it's a layup that you're locked in. You're going to get 80 to 90% of it. Variable means variable. And so, in our case, there are very quantifiable measurements associated with that. And, hypothetically, go out and close, 3 new strategic partners and define what that is. And if you close 1, it's worth this. If you close 2, it's worth that. Even an earlier stage, get your Series B financing is a milestone. Close your first 3 customers is a milestone. So, it is I think there's a difference even between sort of what a variable program and then a bonus program where there's a sense that it's, pretty much locked and loaded. And I think if you think of it as variable, then it's a lot easier to get the people around the table in your board meeting to come up with a plan that makes sense.
So does your plan, is it still an annual based plan, or when you're saying get 3 customers, could it take 2 years and it's just once you hit?
Well, no, I mean, I think, in our case, I joined 4 years ago, we were sort of at Series B and we had our first release in the market, friends and family customers. So, it wasn't the same as before that. I mean, I agree with Ammar. Earlier on, it's a little bit squishier. But yeah, ours is an annual plan except for our salespeople, which are measured, month to month or quarter to quarter.
Just a question. Part of the reason why I'm here is not just from the CEO point of view, but for the other executives in the executive layer. When you're bringing those VPs and you're an early stage company, you're either bootstrapping or you've just got your first round of funding in. I'm trying to get some sort of guidance on what is the, if you can't give numbers, where are the best sources for us to go to say, okay, budget in this amount for your executive layer, total compensation. What sort of, what sources should I be going to get that in a way that's not going to get punted out by the VC saying you're overpaying, but is going to allow me to also attract talent because I'm paying enough?
Well, one place I said to start is probably to check with those VCs because they often have their own surveys that they're going to feel most comfortable with. So many VCs participate not all in the same survey, but in their own, or they have one for their portfolio companies. And that's the first place they will look to see what the market is.
Yeah, I think they're very, very willing to do that, and you can save yourself a lot of time by finding out what they know.
Yeah.
Because that's going to certainly be the beginning of the discussion or the negotiation. But I think in our case, over the last several years, we've probably used 2 outside compensation consultants along the way to provide perspective. A lot of it early on was around what's the appropriate level of option grants. And then more recently, as we got to be a larger company, making sure that all of our employees were at the appropriate compensation level relative to the rest of the market.
And at the risk of being, totally self-serving, that's one of the functions that ExpertCEO provides, where you can get on and ask questions of your peers and get that kind of get that kind of feedback on a confidential basis.
Once a